We are.
Jim, can you reach
Can you
that?
guys grab that mic?
Just,
No,
just push
click
the button.
it. Yeah, just click it.
There
Thank
you
you.
go. We
Wonderful.
just need green.
A PZM.
All right, everybody. We are back in our Town of Evansville budget session, and we are currently working on our water treatment budget.
There you go.
Jim, we've been going
They showed
down.
there's big ones that he
Better have a big one.
has nicely printed out and given to us.
Thank you.
Jim, we've just been having everybody go line item by line
Right.
item down, and then it's the council, and anybody has any questions, they can ask.
Okay. Well, the first few, you guys, or I should say you guys, Lexi figured all out for us. That's based on the salary.
Do
So
we
she
trust
must
her?
have
Do we trust her?
projections.
And the salaries are for three
Full time. Yes.
full-time folks.
These are three of them?
Yes.
So I don't really have any comment on any of that. I imagine it's just calculated and you know what you're paying us and
Yep.
it's probably
Not
pretty
much.
straightforward.
Not much negotiation on that.
Yeah.
So we'll go to 50, 74, 200, dues and subscriptions. Jim, can you walk the council through what kind of dues and subscriptions that you guys do for water treatment?
I'm not really aware of any, but clearly we're spending some money on it here. So what
It
do
says
we
math.
have?
Math.
Math.
Lexi,
So-
can you assist us with
With
this?
math.
Yeah, what,
Um,
are we members of the
WWQ, PCA.
yeah,
Rural water.
Rural Water Association?
Um,
I don't know if we're members of AWWA. American
That one
Water
doesn't-
Works
That one doesn't
Association.
That
ring a
doesn't ring a
bell.
bell.
Yeah, they're pretty proud of it, but it does get you cheap prices on their textbooks and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if it's worth considering that or not. When
Guess
I-
it depends on how often you're getting textbooks.
Right, well, that's the thing. But I'm kind of amazed that we're spending
Can't make a look.
as much as we are on
Could you do
dues
the
and
only two I can think
subscriptions.
of?
I'm trying to
Could be
think,
74, 200.
is there some other thing that we pay dues to?
Janelle's gonna go get us
Find
a
it. Yeah.
detailed list.
Yeah, I really
Yeah,
don't.
those are the two I can think of.
That's the two I
off
can
the
think of,
top
but I
my
don't think
head.
they're that expensive, but maybe they are.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to dues and subscriptions.
Okay, it's 200.
Registrations.
And once again, I have no idea what we register.
Lexi?
If you do like training, if you sign up for anything with WWQPCA, I think
Okay.
Chuck did an
but-
online something.
Right. I don't know that they charge us for any of those online ones, did they?
Mhm.
Okay, I know if you actually go to the conferences,
We pay.
they charge.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
and they did send a bill
Yeah.
for that one. I remember it
And we
was for
have to
Chuck.
do that because it's continuing education and you have to
Yes.
have all the hours or
Yes.
your license won't renew.
Yes,
So,
so that is
okay, so
what would
that's
fall
covered
under there
under-
if, yeah,
okay,
if they
registrations.
attend any training or,
Right. And there's a lot of that we have to do. We have to get 24 hours
yes,
and
for
each license.
yes.
And Chuck and I both have, and Ted maybe too, I'm trying to think, we maintain our level 1 license even though we have higher licenses
Mhm.
because that
Yep.
also allows us to do wastewater. And right now, because it's hard to find people for public works, I'm signed up as a wastewater person as well. So
Mhm.
anyway, so that's what that goes to. Let's see, what's the next one? Travel expenses, it used to be that they would have these conferences all over the state. They tried to spread it out so that nobody had to travel more than other people. But anymore, they've said, nobody's got a big enough facility to do it except Casper and it's centrally located, so it's always here in Casper. So we generally don't really have any travel expenses. We kind of keep it in the budget in case.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, we really haven't had any for a number of years. So. And lodging and meals, same thing. That would be for if we had to travel out of town to go to one of these training things. And we really haven't had to because they always have them here in town or they do it virtually. So. Okay. So then office supplies, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, I guess. I didn't increase that over the previous year. I figured the same thing's probably fine. That's one of those things that probably kind of goes more in spurts than it does in, I mean, we gotta buy, I suppose, paper and pencils and, you know, that kind of thing. But then every once in a while you have to buy like a printer or something, so I don't know if that's considered an office supply.
So then do we need to take out your travel expenses and lodging and meals then? Or do we want to just keep them in there just in case?
I don't think it's a bad idea to keep them there just in case, because if somebody holds a training and we have to travel for it, that'd be where we put it. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world if we had to and just go somewhere else in the budget. I think that's,
Yes,
Electronics.
yes.
Can we go back to the dues and subscriptions?
Okay, yeah, what all-
The 5074 200. Janelle, do you have updates on that?
That was Charter for their internet. Comtronics for the, For the
Alarm
alarm.
monitoring.
mhm. There's some
Interesting.
Visa charges in there.
okay. Well, I could see the alarm monitoring maybe is kind of expensive. I don't know how much we
I
pay
think
for
it's,
that.
is it like $3.50 a quarter or
Okay, wow, okay.
something? And then of course Charter.
Yeah, that's
Right.
monthly, yeah.
You know, I always wonder when it is we're supposed to get this free internet that's gonna take the place of that.
Well, it's gotta be Mountain West.
Right.
And I don't, is there fiber? Have they brought
They
fiber?
ran the fiber 2 or 3 years ago, and then they always come and say, okay, we're gonna come back next week and we're gonna hook this up, and then a year goes by. And then they come
'Cause
and
I
they do a
don't-
little something and they go,
I
oh,
don't
we're
think
gonna hook
we've
you up next
bought
week.
the switches or anything. I know that was gonna be one of the last ones.
Okay,
And of course, now that we have an IT person,
they can prod them.
we'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
there.
I mean, it's not a big deal one way or the other, but if we're spending money that we don't have to, because I know they promised, since we're giving them access to that site on the mountain, that we're supposed to get free service, so.
That was the goal.
Yeah.
We've been delayed,
Okay.
but we're
moving.
back in business again.
Right.
We're back to printing.
Printing, and I don't know that we typically have any printing done. The only thing that I can think of would be when we do our annual consumer confidence report, which is basically gets sent out once a year and just,
Which, by the way, I need.
we need to get that done, yeah. But I think you guys have been just putting it in with the water bills.
And then post
We
it.
post it on the website and
Right.
then we make notification on the water bills about it.
That's it, yeah. So there really isn't any printing.
No, and I think the printing for this one, I can't remember what it was.
Would it be
But if it's
the water
something-
study that we get?
Yeah, $33.
Do you have some schematics printed or anything like that?
You know, I don't know if we get charged for that. We haven't had anything for years. We've got a map of the water system that's probably 10 years old, and they keep saying, oh, we're gonna print you a new one. But
No,
I think that's covered by the engineering,
yeah.
what we pay for that, so. Now, I have come over in the past because we could not get the stuff to print on any printer that we had, and had you guys just printed the stuff on you guys' printer here. But
Okay, look at it.
I don't imagine you charged us for that, so.
Of course we do.
Maybe that wouldn't have been this year, though. That was probably a couple of years ago. So I don't know.
So we'll come back to that one. So safety equipment and uniforms.
You know what that mostly ends up being for us? We don't really have uniforms, but if we go by hearing protection or the dust masks or that kind of thing. So if we go out to typically just go to Menards and buy it, then we go ahead and put it on there, so.
And in terms of your guys' equipment, does water treatment have everything that they need in terms of equipment? So with your masks and all of your stuff, do you guys need anything additional in regard to that? Or you guys feel like
I
you've
think
got up-to-date equipment out there right now?
for safety equipment, I think so. You know, at one point there was discussion that we're supposed to have fit testing and all that kind of stuff And that never came to pass. And the fire department was gonna put us through a school and all this kind of stuff and check our equipment and that kind of thing, but nothing's ever happened. But the thing of it is that if there's a chlorine leak, we're supposed to just call the fire department. So we don't need any SCBA or anything like that. And everything else, it's just dust type stuff like from the,
I'll follow up on that
The
with the
alum.
chief and double check
yeah,
that piece.
see if that's something that we're supposed to actually get done or not. I'm trying to think. I think that might have come up on one of those workers' comp surveys where they show up and kind of check stuff.
And we'll go back to printing just for a second. What was the cost for?
Just as paper from Office Products.
Oh, there you go.
Logos,
You know, I think,
Atlas.
no, I don't think we've gotten any from Atlas.
We order from Atlas.
Oh, okay. Well, we probably wanted some 11 by 17 paper to put in our printer.
Right? This beautiful paper right here.
This stuff here. So you probably bought us a couple reams of that stuff. That makes sense.
Wasteman size.
What's that?
Wasteman size.
Exactly.
Yes.
We like this. We can see our schematics of the electronic stuff and all the electrical wiring and that kind of good stuff a lot
So
better
anything
on
else
this.
with safety equipment and uniforms?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, and I'll double check with the chief on
Okay.
that fit testing for you.
Yeah, we're not that gung ho to get it done, and somebody just suggested that at one point, and so they said, oh, we can do it. You don't have to pay to go have training or whatever. They can do it for us somehow.
Okay, yeah, I'll double check on that.
Then we get into the telephone, and I guess, we never see those bills, so I assume you guys know what that costs and what it's going to cost. And our telephone is technically it's
That's
through.
your cell phone.
Well, that's true, the cell phones, and then
Then,
there's also.
CenturyLink.
Spectrum, we don't have CenturyLink anymore.
Oh, yes, it is
So-
Spectrum. It's
So
in
it's
there.
through Spectrum, so it's part of that cable thing. Right on.
Such an annoying one.
So
The
the,
sounds are.
line item 5074-350, the utilities for electricity, the Rocky Mountain Power rate increases. Do we happen to know what those rate increases are going to?
10% with possibly 2 more coming.
And then they always do that thing where the electricity rate
increase?
went up only 10%, but the delivery charge or something like that goes up. That's what the gas company did this last time, and everybody's like, why are you guys using so much more gas than you ever used before? And it's like,
It's not
We're
gas,
not.
it's the delivery.
it's the delivery charge, quote
So
unquote.
is this current number with the 12% increase, Lexi? So if Rocky Mountain Power is going to do a rate increase and we're looking at about 10% plus a 2%, are we accounting for the possible 12% increase in this line item
For the, which one?
for the
Let's see,
5074-350?
I don't know if
Got to get my
you did or
calculator
not.
here.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have that clear
That
number.
would be 84,000 would be 1.12 times the 75,000.
Okay, and then we've got it budgeted for 85.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's in there. Okay.
But my little calculation based on the idea that this figures that are in here were 75% of the year meant that it should have been 77,000 instead of 75. So maybe we want to go 1.12 times 77. Which would be 86.
Are we able to move that number?
they certainly can.
Does that seem
Yeah,
like a better guess? I don't know.
Yeah. so 86,000 instead of 85.
Yeah, that'd probably get us pretty close.
Okay.
So what's the next one? Natural gas. Once again, I don't know if there's gonna be increases in that or if we can figure that's gonna stay constant for the next year. It looks like we're not actually, based on this calculation, we're not in any danger with the 7,500, so I left that the same.
Okay.
And then let's see the next one, postage. And once again, we don't mail anything out, but when you guys send out the water
Utility
bills, does that get charged to us?
We spread it around to, yeah,
Okay,
multiple.
yeah,
So yes, your budget gets it.
okay, so I think I've raised that to 2,000 because my projection was it would be 1,882 if things kept on course the
Yeah.
way it had been, so I bumped that up $500. And I know postage rates either just went up or they're going to go up. So
Did they already go up?
I think
It
maybe
may
they
have
already
gone into
did.
effect. I think, aren't they talking 75 cents?
I don't know. So hopefully that's a reasonable
But we go through
guess.
Ambi and we get a reduced rate.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Because they have like a postage meter or something. It's
and if they can take all of our mail and group it in with everybody else throughout Casper,
oh, wow.
and it ups their count, and then you
Do
can
they
get
get a better discount?
Mhm.
Well, hopefully going up from 1,500 to 2,000 is enough to cover that. Does that seem reasonable to everybody?
Yes.
So it says,
Yeah, I
well, the proposal
read
for
something.
first class is gonna increase, expected to increase from 73 to 78 cents. So, and I don't know, I don't remember what our cutoff is.
Right, and what the discount is and all that kind
Right.
of thing. I don't know, that's just sort of a guess that hopefully is a little bit above what it'd be without being ridiculous, so,
Sure guesstimation.
yeah.
I like those.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, what's the next thing?
First aid
First
supplies.
aid supplies, we really don't spend a lot on that. It looks like so far this year we haven't spent anything. I suppose technically we should go through our first aid kit and throw away anything that's expired and make sure we've got, we don't keep an awful lot of weird stuff around, but it's just the typical first aid kit you see hanging on the walls. So, I don't know.
Go through some of your like antibiotics and stuff, they do expire.
Well, that's true. I don't know if
So-
we have any
Oh,
antibiotics.
But there might be
Well,
like a
like-
triple antibiotic
There you
even in
go,
there, so look
exactly,
at that dates on
Neosporin
it.
type
Mhm.
stuff, yep.
That's when you just double the dosage on top of it, right?
Exactly, smear a bunch of that
Just
on
smear
there.
more.
You just run over to Public Works and they'll give you some duct tape and
Super glue.
super glue.
Super glue, that's right.
Super glue is surprisingly effective. I know they say, oh, it's gotta be medical grade, but,
All the difference is there is the alcohol content.
well, or the fact that somebody says it's medical grade. And in fact, it is the exact same stuff.
All right, we're moving on to the next line
Super
item,
glue. All right,
repairs and maintenance.
that's always hard to predict because it's based on something breaking down. So we've got a lot of equipment at the water plant that was put in 1978. And something could fail at any time. So it's just wild speculation that, that's gonna cover stuff that breaks. So I just bumped it up a little bit because of where we are. It's 96.79, that supposedly is 75% of the year. That would work out to 12,905. That's what I mean by math. That's just this calculation that's in my spreadsheet there. So I upped that a little bit. 15,000, hopefully that's a reasonable guess. And, like I say, you could have something really big break that costs way more than that. So it's just, and one of the things that I'm curious about is, we have this pump that's out for repairs. And it's supposed to be back sometime in mid-May. And I need to pester them and see where they're really at on it. But that's an expensive item. I think, $39,000 they're gonna charge us to repair that pump. But we've been missing the thing for at least 6 months. Just takes them forever to get this stuff done. So we're running with, we got 2 pumps, but we're running with just one. If that one fails, no water gets sucked out of the river. So that's not a good thing. But, I don't know if that's gonna get done to where it gets put on this year's budget, or if that's gonna carry forward and end up being on next year's budget. So it makes it kind of hard to, if that's considered equipment repair, so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
Hello,
not,
Ernie.
I'm not sure if it's better if it goes on this year's or next year's.
Yeah.
Is that, does anybody have any preference there?
Should be this year, I think.
Jim, do we know when that bill's gonna be coming in?
That's what they won't bill us until it's done. And it won't be done until,
Until they get it done.
if it happens in mid-May, it'll go on this year. If it happens in June, well then it's gonna end up being carried forward to the next year. So how do you know, And that's
So-
kind of typical of a lot of this
So
stuff.
Jim, Lexi's telling me that we would be okay in
Either
the
way.
event
If
either
it-
way.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I think the money's been sort of earmarked for that because we knew what it was gonna cost when they initially gave us the proposal for it and we gave them a purchase order, so I suppose that's irrelevant. And maybe that just doesn't affect this number here. So then the next one, which is a big one here, is the chemicals, this 5074-410. And I increased that because the projection already was that we should have had the budget be $100,040 for this year. And we actually only had it set to be 88,000. And the other thing we got coming up is the alum that we use. We're using a lot more potassium permanganate and a lot more alum because of the algae that's in the river. And we can't say exactly where that's coming from, but it's something that's slowly gotten worse over the last 5-6 years. And so we're having to blast it pretty hard to get rid of that and to get our disinfection byproducts low enough that we don't get a nasty gram from the EPA about that.
Have we got any additional updates on the algae coming?
Well,
Back?
we don't really know where it's coming from and it's speculation, but it's interesting, to have algae in the river, you have to have nutrients, something that feeds that algae. And back in the day, it used to be phosphates. Remember, they took phosphates out of dishwashing soap and clothes washing detergent. So none of that stuff works like it used to because it doesn't have phosphates in it. But that's a real nutrient that really makes algae grow. And so that's why they've tried to get rid of that. But upstream from us, we really don't have anything like that, except that the city of Casper is now going to spend, $12 million to replace and repair a sewage line that's out in Paradise Valley. Now, if that means that that's leaking and it's getting into the river, that could be the source of the nutrient. The other thing is it could be agricultural runoff. I mean, it's hard to say what it is. But if we could find out what it is and get the DEQ to keep that from happening, then we wouldn't have all this algae in the river. And it's weird to try to treat the algae. It turns out that the way our water plant works is the best possible technology for that. But what you end up having is the algae itself, the free-floating algae, not moss. That's just attached, so that's not really a problem. But the free-floating algae, you have the individual cells, and they get sucked into the water, into the plant, and normally what gets particulate matter and viruses and bacteria and stuff is it gets entrapped in this flock that gets created when we use the alum, which is our primary coagulant. And it's really bizarre, but it's all this electrochemistry, and it's a matter of if you have small particles that are suspended in the water, say dirt, you set that glass of water on the table and watch it for a while, and the heavy stuff will settle out. But there's stuff that will never settle out. And that's because it all has the same electrical charge on it, which you'd think nothing in water would have a charge, but it does. And so these particles repel each other, and they'll just stay suspended forever. And the algae is in that category. Well, it's really strange, but years ago, I was reading online and trying to figure out if we could use potassium permanganate to pre-oxidize the organic carbon in the water so that we don't develop these disinfection byproducts, which are something that happens when you whack it with chlorine. And it creates these chlorine compounds. So let's say you've got methane in the water and you hit it with chlorine, well, then you're going to end up with a chlorinated version of that. Some of these carbons get replaced with chlorines. But in any case, what I found out was we can't possibly put enough potassium permanganate in the water to affect that. But I happened to run across an article that said that these people had a water treatment plant on the Nile River in Egypt, and they had free-floating algae. And what they found was they could hit with a little bit of potassium permanganate, and it would mess with the surface of these individual cells such that they would then have an electrical charge on them, and then they could be entrapped in the flock that we create and captured by the flocculation process. And you don't want to hit it with too much permanganate, but you got to give it quite a bit. We end up putting about, right now, we're putting 600 parts per billion in, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it makes the water look noticeably pink. Permanganate is weird stuff. But anyway, that then really helps. And so we're blasting it with more permanganate. And permanganate ain't cheap. I don't know what it is, but last time I looked, it was like $350 for a 55-pound pail of it. And obviously, when we have to hit it with more of it, it costs us more money. And the same thing is true, we put a little more alum in as well to try to help to capture this stuff. And it's working good, but at the expense of using more of both the alum and the potassium permanganate. So anyway, so I upped that from 88,000 to 110,000. Also, I did talk to our chemical supplier guy, and I said, this alum, it comes from Canada. They just literally dig it up out of the ground, if you can imagine. That's probably how somebody figured out that this stuff actually works for capturing the dirt out of water. They were probably walking along the shore and kicked some of that crap in there and said, whoa, it cleared the water up. You know, you can just envision this being something from hundreds of years ago. But in any case, they just dig it up. And then they grind it up and put it in bags and sell it to us. But if that's going to have an extra tariff on it, that is one of the biggest things that we spend a lot of money on in the chemicals. So I asked the guy that's our supplier, and he said, oh yeah, it's already gone up in price. So hopefully that's a reasonable guess, going to 110,000. This is one of our major expenses. Between that and electricity, that's really kind of the two biggies. And of course, equipment. But, so that's my guess. I don't know what you guys think. Do you think that might go up even more? I mean, you guys see the bills for these chemicals, and
I think that should be sufficient.
you think that'll get her? Okay. Okay, well, I hate to waste everybody's time. Small tools, that's pretty, self-explanatory. I think the most recent thing we did was we bought a battery-operated electric drill. That way you can drill on stuff that's got water around it, and you're not worried about getting electrocuted. You know, you hate to get water in a drill anyway, but at least you're not getting lit up. So that's kind of along those lines. And I just kept that the same because I think we haven't really come close to expending what we spent or what we, budgeted for last year. So it seemed reasonable. Custodial supplies, that's pretty self-explanatory as well. I went ahead and raised it a little bit from $300 to $350 just because all that kind of junk goes up in price. So, kind of trivial, but then professional services, that's one of those things where you guys probably have a better handle on it than we do. It was $33,000 last year. It's $33,000. I just kept it the same. We apparently haven't spent a lot of that. I assume that's probably are part of the engineers, and isn't it? That's
No,
separate.
the audit goes into there, and then what was the piece of equipment you rented? The lift or something, like stuff like that goes in there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or when they had to pull the tank out, whatever they use for that.
Yeah, they ended up bringing in a kind of a lift on a truck, sort of a bucket truck type thing. So I guess that's professional services. I always think of that as being engineering or that kind of thing.
So do we need to drop that down then? Or does 33 a safe bet?
I
to
don't
kinda
know.
keep
I
it
thought
at?
that was part of the end. I looked back at this 2022 and it was up at 23,000. I don't know what we would have spent that on. Does that also include when we have the divers come and do the tanks? Okay. Well, that's probably the 5159 was just that having the divers come. I don't know, but
I think the divers were was that the previous year?
yeah.
Because I want to say that was like 8,000 or 9,000.
Okay. And we're trying to get them to come in every year because the tanks are in need of being coated on the inside. And so if those guys come, they can check it and clean it. And if they see any bad places, they put epoxy on from the inside, which that seems like magic to me. If I'm underwater and I'm spackling something with epoxy, do I trust that to be very good? But apparently it's the deal, so it can't hurt. So we've been having them come every year, so. Trying to think what else would go in there. So I don't know. Do you think leaving that at 33,000 is reasonable, or is that stupid to have that extra money in there?
With the current situation with the tanks and the filters and all of the extra stuff that we talk about,
Yeah, that's scary.
yeah, I stay up late at night thinking about it all. I'm wondering,
Maybe it's good to keep it the same. I don't know.
well, I think maybe we could go down, but then I'm wondering, in this next current budget year, are we going to, I mean, obviously we can't plan for everything, but do you foresee us needing any repairs and or maintenance with the filters? I know what you're getting ready to tell me, with the filters and or obviously the tank has been its own discussion.
Right. Boy, it's hard to say. You know, we want to get the filters redone and we want to get the tanks redone.
Yep.
But that's going to involve getting a grant or low interest loan or some
Yep.
sort of thing. You know, it's funny because we're wanting to get our tanks recoated, and then I just read in the paper the other day or online the other day that Casper got a grant for $12 million to replace a couple of their tanks. And of course, they're doing the right thing. They're putting 2 tanks in. It's actually that big reservoir, which I think is up by the golf course. But they're going to put 2 tanks in instead of a reservoir. And you always want to put 2 tanks in because just what we've been talking about. We have only 1 tank in each site. When you take that tank offline to recoat it, how do you run without a tank? You know, it's really scary. So it'd be nice if we had 2 tanks at each site. But anyway, it's interesting. We can't get any money for our stuff, and Casper manages to get 12 million for theirs. But it's probably they were able to show that it was leaking and they might have had a significant deficiency. Maybe the EPA spanked them for it. And it's sad. We try to make everything work, but you don't get any money unless you actually have a violation. And when you have a violation, well, then the legislature and whoever's, I don't know, whoever's looking at these boards that do the grant giving, that's one of the things on the top of their list that then makes it to where you can get money for something is, oh, you're in violation. Oh, okay, well, now we'll give you the money. So, I don't know.
Lexi, from the financial standpoint, if we did drop it,
Mhm.
what would it be a number that we could drop it to that would still potentially make Jim and the guys warm and fuzzy?
We're talking
But
about
not-
professional
Yeah,
services.
but not put us in a bind when we're looking at all of this, all the things that keep us up at night.
Right.
If something goes wrong, it's gonna come out of repairs and maintenance or equipment expense. Professional services is really just if they have to rent out a truck and come in, that's what would fall
Okay.
under that category.
Okay.
What if we dropped that to 25 instead of 33?
That's what I was thinking.
That
be okay
seems
with that?
reasonable to me too.
25,
Yeah.
so we're gonna change it to 25.
That sounds like a good number. You know, that's the problem with a lot of this stuff, is you're trying to predict the future. We don't have a crystal ball, so. So then there's vehicles, which are always zero. And then we come down to equipment expense, and that's the same sort of thing, because if something breaks, you know, so it's, once again, you're just sort of speculating, you know, so far this year, it looks like we've only spent $1,862, but we've budgeted for $27,500. But is that what the repair on that pump is gonna come out of, that
Mhm.
30-some thousand dollars? So,
And they're
I-
expensive, yeah.
yeah, so then the question is, do you like to have in the budget enough sort of overage, I guess you'd say, that you can cover these unexpected
Yep.
breakdowns, or would you rather budget for what you know you're gonna spend and then have it be kind of a surprise and it comes from somewhere else? I mean, either way, you gotta come up with the money. And I don't know what happens if we have less expense than we actually budgeted for in a year, but presumably that money can go into pay for other stuff that's other departments that need some money, so.
So did you say that pump was coming out of this one?
We don't know, because we don't know when it's gonna be done. It's supposed to be theoretically done the middle of May.
Well, no, the reason why I was saying that is because
Oh,
the
come out of
6 that
that.
we took from the
that line item.
33, could we
Yes.
put it into the 27 for that pump?
If it comes out of this year's budget, then it
It's a
doesn't.
moot
Okay.
point at that
Okay.
point,
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's a
Where's the
hard thing to
budget
guess. Once again, it's
for the equipment expense.
it's a crystal ball.
But you
thing.
said that pump was
Is it
39,000?
What was that money? I wish I had that right in front of me, but I think it was
Okay.
39,000 to do that pump, or am I, the pump that we're getting repaired by DXP that is the, raw water pump from Bryan Stock Trail, is that?
I want to say that was around that figure, it seems like, but that was what, 3 years ago?
Well, no, but they gave us an estimate. And then we gave them a purchase order
Oh.
based on that, and I don't remember what it was. It was over $30,000, and I don't remember what the exact number was, but it was not cheap. And it was one of those things, well, if we replace this other bushing that's down below, that's another $12,000, and I think that's what put it up to that higher price. It was sort of, it's like if you've got that thing taken out of there and you're gonna take 6 months or a year to get the dang thing repaired anyway, do it all, please, because
Yeah.
admittedly, I mean, the other one, or they've lasted until, the other one failed a couple of years ago, but
Mhm.
this one then failed last year or whatever.
So then if we keep
But
the,
they're from 1990, so they last a long time theoretically once they're
Yeah.
fixed, so.
so if we keep the 27,500.
Yeah.
As the treasurer, you'd be okay with that.
Yes.
Okay,
And if we don't spend it, then we can maybe sleep soundly at night.
yeah. I
We
mean,
can worry
it's-
about something else.
Have a
Right.
party.
Yeah.
I
That
like your
would be
thinking,
one
Ernie.
Heck of a party. But I think there's always something that, gonna come up, might not even be our department.
Well, and I think that's the thing with your guys' area, that anything can go wrong at any time.
Exactly.
And we're not gonna know for sure, but if we're thinking about having water for the
Right.
residents in the town,
We
that's
got-
not really something that I want to, that's not an area that I wanna play with.
Right.
I don't know about you guys,
We
but
gotta have water.
You
it's
gotta
not
have,
an,
right,
not an
yeah.
area I wanna be.
It's
One
not
of
a
those
good thing
three
to,
things in life you have to have.
yep,
Are you guys okay with keeping the 27.5?
seem like a reasonable number. It's just, once again, it's a guess. Then we have all this other stuff that's zeros until we get down to leases and permits. And once again, I'm not sure what you guys lease or permit. Does that,
Isn't that the water rights?
I was gonna say, when we're buying that extra water that's stored in the stuff that they added on
The
to
Pathfinder water?
Pathfinder.
Isn't that for the Pathfinder water?
And,
Let me go look.
speaking of which, I never, since that doesn't go away, if you buy it, it carries
Is that
over
the
to the next
railroad
year.
something?
I think it's got something to do with the permits for the railroad.
Yeah.
For crossing the railroad.
Yes, I
Okay.
believe that's what it is, yeah.
Okay.
57
Is that because our pipeline goes under it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so we have to pay for that right away,
interesting.
like, just a yearly expense.
It would be bad to have that not. All right,
Yes, we have to pay for lots of things that sometimes people don't ever see.
right. Yeah, it's
Like
an odd,
waterways.
an odd thing. Well, anyway, I just left that the same because it didn't look like we were approaching any kind of a limit on that. And it may be just that once a year kind of thing. But, I look back at the previous year and in 23, 24.
I think that was
18.
because we had to purchase
The water, maybe?
extra water
Okay.
that year.
And, if we've got a little extra, I don't know that it would be bad to buy a little more, because if you don't use it, you don't lose it. It's like money in the bank.
Carries over.
Yeah, it carries over. And if we have one of these years, and this year apparently they say there's
don't
not gonna
think
be a
we
call on
used-
the river.
And I don't think we used all of it,
No, I don't think we used all of what we had, but I
what
think,
we purchased.
I think it's good to make sure we've got a good buffer there, because if there's a call on the river and we have to use it.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how much it costs per acre foot, but an acre foot's about 325,000 gallons. And if it's a hot summer day and we're actually pumping 1 million gallons out there and the plant's 70% efficient, you're gonna use about 4 acre feet a day. And therefore, you know,
This
a
year
month
it's
of that,
railroad.
Railroad.
what's that?
Previous years it's been
Railroad.
railroad and.
And the water.
Pathfinder water.
Yeah.
Well, I'm tempted to
'Cause I
say
think
we
it
ought to
was-
buy another batch of it this year, just to make sure that we've got
22,
that in
23
reserve.
that
It's
we
not gonna get any
purchased that
cheaper.
extra.
The
Oh,
big,
Cheaper to
That's-
buy ahead than pay for
that's
it after
when-
you've used
when
it.
we
That's
bought,
what I'm
we
thinking.
went from 100
You know,
acre feet
if
to
you-
300.
If you buy that and you've got that in your bank account, so to speak, that's nice. And it's sort of inflation proof, you know, you're buying it at a cheaper rate maybe than what it'll be in the future, so.
What's that, water?
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is if we have extra in the budget this year, maybe throw some of that at some more water reserve.
Oh, we've got 300 acre feet set aside for Pathfinder water. And when we had the call on the river
It's a couple-
April of last year, I
Yeah.
think we ended up using like 18.
Right, because it was only half of the month,
Mhm.
Yep.
So,
so we still have
We got some.
300?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, we've been keeping 300 in the bank.
that's probably not a bad place to be. That's like 10 months worth maybe. Well, no, it's not. It's a month's worth. On a
I don't
hot-
know what,
on
I
a
don't know what
hot
an
month.
acre feet
It's
acre foot.
325,000 gallons, and I was just saying if you
for an
got,
acre foot.
yes, so if you have a hot month, you know, where you're gonna be pumping 1 million gallons out into distribution, plant 70% efficient, call it 1.4 million gallons or something like that, raw water.
Well, and you might even have to look at water restrictions,
Well, that's true
watering
too. You
on
can just tell people to stop
off days.
watering, but, you know.
I mean, if it came down to critical, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, anyway, just a thought. Of course, I tend to be very conservative that way, and I'd like to see 600 acre feet maybe in the, but, you know, what do they charge us for that?
It's $25 an acre foot, but if you don't use it, you get a credit back.
That's what I thought. You don't lose it, so, I don't know, what if we had 600 acre feet in there? What would it cost us to buy that other 300 acre feet?
I don't recall what it cost us when we upped it
I don't know.
a few years back. It was,
I don't know, seems like a pretty good deal, but
And would that be in the
Just a
leases
thought.
and permits?
that was, yeah, I think, is that what we're saying? We're leasing that water?
yeah, I think that 20,
Permit.
22, 23.
Yeah, how'd we end up with $7,000? Was that?
Well, I think that's the year that we increased from 100 acre
Okay.
feet to 300 acre feet.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm just looking at it and saying, well, if we budgeted for 2,500 and we've only spent 379, maybe take and buy whatever that extra would buy us,
Yeah,
just,
use our remainder and
Yeah,
buy
just-
extra.
just get a little more. But-
I have a feeling it's gonna be another hot summer. So
Well,
it'd
that's
be
the
a good
thing.
idea.
I hope
Okay.
it keeps, I don't think there's supposed to be a
Well,
call on the river this year, but if the
so-
reservoirs are down, so next year we can have.
So the critical times of year that we have to worry about a call on the river is April
That's interesting.
and August.
Now, August
because-
makes sense.
Because
That's when
we
Nebraska's using
have
it, right?
temporary, we are utilizing temporary water rights through the Chevron Texaco.
Right.
And so when they put a call on the river prior to Chevron Texaco's water right date
Right.
of 23, it's because they're going back to 1904, which is Nebraska's.
Right,
date.
inland lakes and all that stuff.
I've only seen calls on the river in April.
Interesting.
There was one year, it was a super hot, dry August, and the state engineer's office told us that we may be faced with a call in the river.
But it didn't
But
happen.
we also had wildfires around here and it was pulling water from the river, but it
Okay,
never happened.
okay.
So,
Well, I don't know. It's just one of those things I worry about.
and I don't know, what is our total acre feet that we've used in the month of April? In the past, I think that, we've been in the ballpark of 30 acre
Right.
feet, 40 acre feet.
Right.
Yeah, it's always been the month of April.
Okay. It's interesting that it happens in April, because you'd think it would have happened later in the season when it's dry and all these irrigators
Yeah.
downstream are just watering the daylights out of their stuff, but.
It may have something to do with the snow melt.
And it
Come
probably
April,
has to
maybe.
do
I don't
also
know.
with how they schedule filling their reservoirs or some such thing. I don't know. Maybe they kind of store it up and, you know.
So then potentially we could stay with the 2,500.
Yeah, I think
We can purchase more out of that 2,500.
If need be.
that seems good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then equipment, once again, this gets us into this speculating type of thing,
Office equipment?
you know.
Is that where we're at? Office
Well-
equipment?
Office equipment, okay, office equipment. Yeah,
Okay.
you know, we don't buy a huge amount of stuff. We got that printer last year and actually physically bought that, but then of course there's a little bit of, I don't know what you call, but an ongoing maintenance contract with it. I don't know if that comes out of that or if, how that gets done, but, you know,
That
it's only
comes
showing.
out of 874, maintenance service agreements.
So you think that goes, that's supposed to be coming out of that office equipment budget or not? I didn't change it because we hadn't used any so far this year according to this, but,
Maintenance service agreements,
okay,
that's where it comes out of,
okay,
your monthly fee.
all right.
Are you guys okay with your towers and or computers and or electronics at the water treatment?
Well, you know, everything's fine right now, but I was just reading a spooky article by a guy who said you're not gonna be able to run Windows 11 on any computer that's older than 2018 because it requires that you have this other little gadget that goes on the motherboard that is a hardware security kind of thing. And so, I mean, we're just running Windows 10 on everything because it's already to the point where if you change to Windows 11, now it's requiring crap that some of our software that we have to run doesn't have and all that kind of stuff. But he's saying basically a huge number of PCs that are perfectly fine are going to end up in the landfill because Microsoft is enforcing this. I can't remember what they call it, but it's a security gadget that's it's actually a hardware device on the motherboard that is doing some encryption and decryption, all that kind of stuff. And
So all of the computers.
so everything's
and
fine,
everything's
but,
running.
you know, if they drop support for Windows 10 and then you want to have security updates and then that means you got to go to 11 and then that means you got to buy a new PC, I suppose that could change at any time. So once again, speculation.
Okay.
Yeah, I just saw that the other day. Everybody get ready to throw your PCs away, even though they work fine.
All right, equipment.
Equipment, same sort of thing here. I went ahead and increased it a little bit just based on where we are this year versus what the budget is or where we were at 75% of the year gone. So I raised it from 6050 to 7500. Once again, that's speculating because equipment, I guess that's not equipment repair, but
New equipment.
it's just new equipment, you know, so stuff that you have to have, but
Is there anything
Typically that's-
specific that you would qualify under new equipment that we're gonna need in the next year?
the only thing I can really think of is that if we do get the grant or loan or whatever, so that we can do the emergency connection, we're going to need to have, there's some of that stuff that we've sort of agreed we're gonna provide as part of that job, and a lot of it is a control system that goes up at that tank, and then a control system that communicates with it down at the water plant so that we can keep track of what the chlorine tanks weigh and all that kind of stuff up there at that end. And so all of that would be stuff that I would build and program and we would put in there. So
Okay.
it's not super expensive because we're doing it ourselves. Who knows, it might be 50 or $100,000 if we had somebody else do it, but if I do it, it might be $5,000. It'll be a lot cheaper, but we still got to buy the equipment to do it and a radio link to communicate between the two and all that kind of stuff. So that's all stuff that could potentially come out of there, but it's contingent on us getting the money and then have somebody actually bid on the job. You know, last year we had the money, but nobody bid to do the work, so that didn't get done. So I don't know.
Yeah, that is that
Yeah.
bidding part of it.
Yeah,
Nobody
exactly.
bid on it.
And once again, I don't know if this would be considered equipment or where this would come from, and I don't know when this is gonna happen, but we had a sanitary survey in 2022. And in that sanitary survey, they found two significant deficiencies, and one of them is just a paperwork thing that we're gonna do. The other one is they want us to relocate the outfall of the overflow from tank one. They say it cannot go into what they're now saying is a storm sewer. You know, we say it's a culvert and it passed all the years past, but we just got the results of that survey, even though it was done in 2022, we got it back this January. They're way behind on that stuff. So right now, Shane is looking at it but it'll have to be, you know, approved by the DEQ and all that, and they'll have to excavate and dig up that pipe and move it to where it doesn't go into that other pipe and comes out and, you know, this could end up being a project. So I don't know, is that considered equipment? Or is that
What are we buying?
more of a construction project?
Redesign of the overflow for
The overflow for tank one.
Redesign?
Yeah, well, it has to be relocated. Right now, this pipe terminates after it overflows from the tank and goes through this pipe. It comes in, it goes into a culvert, and that culvert then dumps out into a kind of a gulch. So it's just a place for that water to be safely disposed of if the tank overflows. Well, EPA's got all kinds of requirements. Oh, it's got to have a 24 mesh screen on it and all this, even though, you know, some critter would have to crawl up 200 feet vertically to get up there, and water and crap would have to go up to get in there. Nope, that's the rule. So anyway, it can't go into that culvert anymore because they say, well, that is part of a stormwater system, or, you know, and that's not allowed. So we'll have to dig it up, put like a 45 in that pipe and make it so it comes down past where that culvert terminates, so that it comes to daylight, not in that culvert. And then that has to be within between 12 and 24 inches above the splash pad that it goes on and all that kind of good stuff. And so they might have to put a vault in there and put an air gap in there, and, you know, so it's a construction type thing. Is that considered to be equipment, or is that, okay,
One time.
well, that has nothing to do with it. So,
Could be,
Once again-
Capital.
could be one time, could be,
yeah, but that'll go on next year's budget, more than likely, because he's gonna have to get DEQ approval for how we're gonna do it and all that kind of stuff, and then it'll have to get done sometime this summer. He's hoping he'll give us a 6-month extension and we can get it done before November. So that'll clearly be in next year's budget, and I do not know what that'll cost, but I'm sure Shane will give us an idea of what
would
he
that be
thinks.
something more appropriate to approach council with, since it's a specialized project?
Okay,
yeah, because
All right, well,
without
we-
knowing how much it's gonna be or.
how do you budget for it? Yeah. Now, when I talked to Shane about it before, he said he didn't think it was gonna be that big of a deal, but you know how that is. Anytime you're trenching stuff and moving a pipe and setting a concrete thing, I don't know.
Okay.
Probably way more than what you think it should cost, but that's the way all this stuff goes when you're trying to make the EPA happy. It's not cheap. All right, so equipment. I just raised that to 70/50 based on where we are so far this year. And assuming that was 75% of the year's worth, it made it look like we should have budgeted a little more for it, 6,700 instead of 6,000. So I raised it to 7,500 because I figure everything's gonna get more expensive. You know, we had this thing here where the power company fed us with too high a voltage for probably about 6 hours a couple weeks ago or a week ago. And that really put a stress on some of our equipment. The compressor was making all kinds of racket, but it seems to be working. Then we've got this other gadget that is a deal to dry the air, and it's basically a glorified refrigerator that cools down a chamber that the air has to go through. It allows water to condense out of that, keeps the air dry so it doesn't screw up all our other stuff that runs on that air. That thing wasn't working, and when I took it apart, it had a bunch of burned up wiring and a burned up switch. But I don't know that that was related to that voltage being too high, or if it just was the fact that the corrosive environment down there made the switch not make contact, which made it get hot, which burned up the wires. So I replaced all of that stuff, and it's running. But they're like $5,300 if you have to buy a new one. So that's equipment, but then is that equipment repair or is that new equipment? Because we buy a new one, but it's to replace one that blew up.
Lexi, would,
So, anyway. That's where we're at. I raised that to 7,500 just on the basis of how much we've used so far this year.
would line item 5074 530 and a line item 5074 783,
Aren't they the same?
wouldn't they be the same thing?
No, equipment expenses, repairs to equipment,
That's
stuff like that.
repairs.
Only
Okay.
repairs.
Equipment is if you purchase a new piece of equipment.
Okay.
Right.
We might just wanna,
Well, I don't know. Does that seem reasonable to just bump it up a tiny bit from what it was since we were kind of close to that?
could we go 7,000 instead of 7,500?
I mean, anything's possible. You just, once again, we're speculating, so.
How do you guys feel about 7,000?
7,000, 7,000 would be good.
Okay, sounds good.
So we're just gonna take that, drop that down. All right, next one.
Okay, I guess we get to insurance and on property and
Janelle's
equipment.
Janelle's going to check what that's gonna be.
Okay.
You guys
The
know.
bill came in today.
So I don't know, is that, what would you like that to be?
For which one?
This is insurance?
Janelle went to go look because the bill just came in.
Oh, okay,
So she's gonna check that out to give us an accurate.
all right. Are we kind of done for the year? Has all the insurance been paid for then, based on this one that she's going to look for? Or is that sort of the final
We
number?
only pay once a year.
Oh, really? It's one thing? Okay. Because it showed $14,008 has been expended out of that so far.
Janelle, where are we at
I'm sorry.
with the insurance?
I think if you budget 15, you'll be safe,
15?
because it came in at 29.
Oh, you're divvying it up amongst,
Yeah, 29. It came, it was 29, 361 or something.
yeah,
Because I always divide that between 50-50 between general government and water treatment.
okay.
And is that just for insurance, property and equipment?
No.
Insurance, emission?
The liability, the insurance emission error
Oh, okay.
liability,
Okay.
that
So
one. I
instead of
don't know.
20,000,
So the property, I don't know what the property is yet. But
Well,
on the,
I just looked at this $14,000 that it said we'd spent so far in the year, and I made the assumption that that's 75% of the year. But that probably gets billed in one or two big lumps, so that's probably
one,
one
one,
less.
So,
one thing. Okay, well, then you
I
probably
would-
don't need to really change that.
I would say the 50-74, 871, we need to bump that to 15.
15.
and then leave the other one the same.
I would leave the other one the same.
Okay.
I'm scared that
At 17 or at 20.
at 20,
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the bill on that yet, but
All right.
Okay,
I'm
that's
scared.
17. You said 15?
15 for the
871.
871
I
one, yeah.
put it on the 20,000
And
one.
then-
Where do you guys have
13.
871 at?
Well, it's 50,
Second
74,
page at the
87.
very,
If you
very
go-
It's on the side, on the left.
Oh, I don't see it.
If you go
Well,
all
no,
the way-
yeah.
Yeah.
It's wedged under the edge
Yeah.
there.
Sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No, I had the same problem, Daisha. I'm like,
Yeah,
wait,
pretty
I don't
much.
have one of
Oh,
those.
yeah.
Which one you're putting
wait.
871 to 15?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're leaving the other one at
20.
20? Okay, so you're thinking those are pretty good guesses. All right. Then we got the maintenance and service agreements, and that's, the one thing I know for sure is Hawk for our various instruments. We've got instruments that measure the water quality, basically different things, and I know we definitely.
Your heater, your Ingersoll.
Oh, the
Oh,
air
Pressing
that's
compressor.
on
true,
that, That'll
the-
come out of there.
The air compressor over BST, yep,
Copier.
copier, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
printer copier thing.
Well, I just looked at that 13,153 and said that's 75% of the year, which I don't know if it is. That, once again, that might be billed in lump sums to where it represents all of it, but if it was only 75% of it, then that means that 17,537 would have been a better estimate. And then I figured, well, Hawk and them, they like to raise their prices all the time, so I said 20,000, but is that
I'd say we could probably go with 15.
Yeah.
okay? All right, even though the projection is we'll be at 17 something for the end of this
Yeah,
year?
because
Because it's
the
lump sum
one,
type
Inger,
things.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
okay,
pay that, and then Hawk, we do a one-time for
Okay.
that as well.
yeah, all right.
The only one that does monthly is your,
Is the copier, and it's
it's
probably
like
trivial.
$25.
That's what I was thinking, we really don't print that much stuff. Every once in a while, we print schematics and like this sheet or something like that, but that's about it, okay. Then we got a bunch of zeros. And then reimbursable expense, I'm not sure what that actually is, but I suppose that's if I buy something and spend my own money on it, you pay it back. No, that's not it. All right. I have no idea what that means then.
That's an expenditure that you have that we're gonna be receiving money to offset that.
Ah.
So like.
Fire department
payroll
probably has a lot of
deductions.
that.
When we buy a gun for one of the guys, we're gonna be reimbursed for that because it gets deducted out of their paycheck. So it's a reimbursable.
Oh, interesting.
We show it as an expense, but
Right, but you expect to get paid back.
we're getting paid back from other source. So that's what a
Right.
reimbursable
I know the
is.
fire department has a bunch of that kind of stuff because they spend all this money doing whatever, but then they go out and they do a federal fire and then the feds send them some money back.
It'd be a little different.
You know, I don't know. Anyway,
So then
All right,
it's
well,
been zeros for,
I would bump it to 0.
you bump it to 0?
Yeah.
Take it out, okay. We're gonna take it out.
okay, good. That's it that I see.
Wonderful. Any questions from anybody?
I enjoy your emails.
Do ya?
Yes.
Very informative.
Yes, they're
I-
very informative,
I
and
need-
sometimes you put like little like information or some type of little joke in it, and I'm like, I love his emails every time, and I'm like, all right, there we go.
All right.
I'm not. It's one of those I've yet to meet you in person, but I'm like, when you can throw some funny things into emails when it's supposed to be, it's like, there we go.
Good deal.
I like it.
All right, well, I need to do the one for this month so far. I was
And-
gonna give you a picture of our new baby geese.
Oh, yes.
Because
Rex
we
just
had
sent me the
2
pictures of the
geese
babies.
that laid eggs this year. It's always been 1. 2 of them, and they both had 5 babies.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's baby geese running around.
And I'd highly recommend to the council, like, when you get a chance, take the tour of the
Yeah,
water treatment.
I don't know
plant.
who-
I definitely want to.
Who's on that? Well, and you know, we could do kind of everybody at once if that
Sit down
works
with water
good. But
treatment?
I know they've got a thing
Okay.
where you're trying to do sort of one council member is sort of assigned to a different
Yep,
department every
yep.
month. So I don't know
Yep,
who's
I'll
up.
be getting
up
ready
this
to put that out here this
Okay.
week.
I was gonna say, we don't want a quorum.
Yeah, yeah. No
Yeah, but
quorum.
as long as we are not discussing actual budget things, we can all show up to a certain place and tour something and be just fine.
That's true. But it doesn't bother us doing it one at a time either.
Okay,
Whatever
so water
works.
treatment is
It-
finished,
Yeah,
and
sure.
we've got Quartet 3.
Now, I didn't write anything down on this, but maybe.
Oh, no,
that's
I'm good. You can have it.
easier for you to look
No,
at.
no, 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 I'm good.
Alright.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you,
It's just,
Probably
I
wouldn't
can
take
print
us
one
the
any
whole time,
time,
I
so it's not
asked
like I
to
need
see
it or anything. and
I'll give it to her.
He could
to
do
I didn't write it,
Yeah, that's
Council.
audacious.
which I
No, no.
should have been.
Let's
taking
go ahead
notes,
and
so
turn the-
Numbers are wrong.
You can, you're more than welcome to have it.
Can you
This
guys
is
turn that
Stephanie.
mic off?
Yep.
It's fine for me.
Can you,
everybody.
can you guys pop that in? Hello, everyone.
Howdy. Hello?
Hello?
Do you remember Ernie?
Probably not.
Probably.
You remember Greg? And Alana comes to court?
He gets to see me occasionally.
Yes.
I bring the kids in and they're eating their snacks. I'm like, just be quiet as you eat, please. Don't be disruptive.
They do. They seem to enjoy it. I don't know why.
Your oldest one is very attentive and the
He-
youngest one.
Yeah, the youngest one could care less. Right now, my son loves it. Well, he's kind of like mom. He likes to people watch, but then he's also noticed that there are certain people that like come in or more regulars, and so when they come in, he's like, "Mom, did you see this back?" I wonder what happened.
Did they see the one where the guy got arrested by the ICE?
So we were here that day, yes,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that was when I was just like,
do it tomorrow.
"What's going on?" Because we
Ours
seen
won't
him
take
get
very
handcuffed
long, so-
outside.
Yeah, okay.
Let's
And
let
so I was
everybody
like, oh,
process
what's
the day.
going on?
They can take their
So-
Won't
packets,
see that
bring
guy
everything,
again.
Right.
questions
No,
tomorrow.
but-
Unfortunately, we
Maybe.
have a lot of
Yeah.
repeat.
Maybe, no.
Right? But
We can,
my son was
So what
was
is
very
repeating
much
for?
like he loves to like watch
Speeding?
personalities. Is
Alcohol,
for mine,
not
we
paying the
shouldn't take
fine,
more than
inch warrants not showing up
20,
like we're
30
supposed
minutes
to.
and then I don't think emails.
We try to get them on track so they at least
Cream
pay
of the
some.
crop.
You know,
Well, yeah, I have
And if they
told
don't,
them.
then we send them a letter saying you have a mandatory fine review with my phone, and then they'll miss it, you know. There's another $200 on top of their fine, which they haven't been paying anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's our alternative? Throw them in jail? Costs us $147 a day. And some of them, that's it. Okay, ready?
Yes, sir, take it
Okay.
away.
Dazzle us.
I'm not sure where Ditch is.
Pretty similar to
She was
last year.
talking to Jim.
Those first, all the way down to notary expenses, credit card, bank charges. That's all the same. We've added an additional $500 under office supplies, and that's as a result of having to pay for toner. Okay. Everything stays the same until we get down to equipment expense, and then we've added $1,000 in there.
Yes.
And you'll save for why?
We were donated a printer by the old court, Supreme Court, long time ago. And so I just kind of try to keep some money in there in case we have to have some repairs. Because it's really held up well and they were really good to us to do that.
How old is it?
We went on full court in 2012.
You've had it since 2012?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd say you need some
Yes.
lunch money there just in case, you know. Okay, and then I went down on office furniture. We have added $250 there. That's on the
Right.
second to the bottom.
who's getting a new chair?
Possibly Myrna.
Okay.
Kind of getting to that point.
And then finally, the maintenance service agreements was jacked up to $8,400. That's due to different software maintenance agreements that are mandatory, express bill pay,
Yes.
and so just things that we can't
Yeah.
And what I did is I took what we've already paid for and then averaged it out by the months and then added those extra 3 months on it.
Yeah, quarter.
Yeah.
So the salaries and wages, is that for you two gals and that would be you and then is attorney in on that or is it just you three? For the,
The judge is under professional services.
Where is Scott Murray at?
Professional.
He has his own budget.
He has his own?
Yeah.
That's under the legal budget.
Okay.
Where's the professional services?
Line 1042
450.
450.
Oh, okay, I'm missing it completely. Okay, so judge is that one, and so then you gals are the ones up top then?
Yes.
Okay.
And just so that you know, on the court-appointed attorney, which is 1042 470,
470?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
we budget for, say, 8 attorneys that we may have to appoint.
mhm,
Keep our fingers crossed that it's under that, but we've only been paying $500 and sometimes it's hard
$500
to find
total
somebody to do
appearance,
it.
you know?
Pretty rare that we have those.
It kind of goes in waves. You'll go a long spell, there aren't any, and then you'll hit 2 or 3 that we have to wind up trying to
I
find.
haven't seen those yet. That's why I was curious
Yeah.
of like,
Been lucky so
Pretty.
far.
They have to fill out an application for appointment, and if they say what they have as far as assets, if they have any earnings at all. And if they have a job, you know, I'm not gonna appoint an attorney for, it, you know. And so,
Yeah.
it's where it's like, I've never got to see that. So I'm like, how does that work?
And I'd like to also explain 1042-590. $2,000 in there. We try to budget for 3 jury trials, hoping that we never have one, because they are expensive. We figure $600, because if anyone shows up, you have to pay them. So let's say I call 18 people and they all show up, we have to pay every one of those 18, whether they're picked or not. So you want to figure that. And then occasionally we do have to pay for an interpreter. We got really lucky on the ice guy.
Yeah, that one kid was.
Right. So I just wanted to explain how those are figured.
Well, it looks good.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Benefits.
We didn't get you off the golf course for this, did we? Good, good.
And Myrna's only part-time, so that's why retirement and health is just for Vicky.
Okay. Now I would hate to pull you off the golf course or something.
On such
He's just like,
such a
"Here."
beautiful day too.
Yeah.
It's
It's
been
going to be a
so-
great day for golfing.
So rough. It's like, I would definitely be rather out in the garden right now.
Yeah, I started to feel a little guilty there for a moment.
So we're
just a
gonna,
moment.
Do you guys have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, great.
All righty.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Dave, thanks
a
for
good day.
coming a little early.
You bet.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
hon.
all.
See ya.
All right. we
so
can
we're all
go-
done?
Yep, we're all
Adjourned?
done with the work session for today.
Tomorrow morning, we have police first thing, and then we'll touch on my budgets and then Janelle's budgets.